My name is Dylan Foster. I just turned 19 3 weeks ago, and I thought becoming an adult meant finally having the freedom to make my own choices. Instead, it meant finally being old enough to protect the person who could not protect herself. It meant discovering that sometimes the people you trust most are capable of unimaginable cruelty, and that growing up happens in a single moment when you realize you are the only thing standing between innocence and evil. I was supposed to be living my best college life at Arizona State University, sophomore year, pre-med track, finally feeling like I was building something for myself. My dorm room was on the 8th floor of Barrett Honors College, overlooking the campus quad where students played frisbee and studied under palm trees that swayed in the desert breeze. The morning sun would stream through my window and wake me up for my 8 a.m. chemistry lab, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I had worked 3 jobs during high school to save money for college, washing dishes at a local restaurant until 11 p.m. on school nights, mowing lawns in the brutal Arizona summer heat, and tutoring younger kids in math and science at the community center. My parents helped where they could, but money was always tight in our house. My father's construction business went through cycles of feast and famine, and my mother's job as a school secretary did not pay much. But somehow, between scholarships, student loans, and my savings, I had made it to ASU with a clear path toward medical school. My girlfriend Sarah was a psychology major from Tucson, with curly brown hair and freckles across her nose that appeared more prominently when she laughed. She made me laugh until my sides hurt, usually with spot-on impressions of our professors or observations about the ridiculous things our dorm mates did. We had been dating for 8 months, and I was starting to think she might be the person I wanted to spend my life with. She was smart and kind, and had this way of making even the most stressful day feel manageable. I had a study group that met every Tuesday and Thursday in the library, 5 pre-med students who had somehow found each other in the chaos of organic chemistry and decided to survive together. Marcus was a transfer student from community college who knew more about biochemistry than our professor. Lisa was the daughter of 2 doctors who felt immense pressure to follow in their footsteps. David was a first-generation college student like me, working part-time at the campus bookstore to pay for textbooks. Jennifer was the organized one who kept us all on track with color-coded study schedules and homemade flashcards. For the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged somewhere. I was not the poor kid whose clothes came from thrift stores, or the kid whose parents could not afford to buy school supplies at the beginning of each year. I was just Dylan, pre-med student, future doctor, young man with a bright future ahead of him. But beneath all of that happiness and hope, there was always the constant presence of my grandmother Rose in my thoughts. She was the reason I wanted to become a doctor in the first place. When I was 7 years old, she had explained to me what the different machines did when my grandfather was dying in the hospital. She helped me understand that medicine was not magic, but science, and that people dedicated their lives to learning how to heal others. Grandma Rose was my father's mother, but she had always felt more like my real parent than either of my actual parents ever did. When my mother and father worked late, which was most nights, Grandma Rose would pick me up from school and take me to her house. She would help me with my homework at her kitchen table, the one with the yellow Formica top and chrome legs that she had bought in 1975 and refused to replace because it was perfectly good. She taught me to cook by letting me stand on a step stool next to her while she made dinner, explaining why you always season the meat before you cooked it and how to tell when onions were properly caramelized. She taught me to drive in her old Honda Civic in the empty parking lot behind the shuttered Sears store, patiently explaining how to parallel park and three-point turn while I sweated through my shirt in the Arizona heat. When I was going through my awkward middle school years, struggling with acne and voice cracks, and the general horror of being 13. She was the one who told me that growing up was hard for everyone, and that the kids who seemed to have it all figured out were usually just better at hiding their insecurities. When I was 16 and thought I was in love with Jessica Martinez from my AP history class, Grandma Rose listened to me talk about her for hours without once making me feel stupid for having feelings. She never missed a single one of my baseball games, from Little League through high school varsity. She would sit in the front row of the bleachers with a bag of sunflower seeds and a thermos of sweet tea, cheering loudly when I got a hit and offering encouraging words when I struck out. After every game, win or lose, she would take me to Dairy Queen for a blizzard and ask me to explain the strategy behind different plays. When I graduated high school and was accepted to ASU, she cried harder than my own mother did. She hugged me tight and told me how proud she was, how she knew I was going to do great things, how she could not wait to call me Dr. Dillon someday. She gave me $500 that she had been saving from her Social Security checks, money she could not afford to give but insisted I take for textbooks and school supplies. The last conversation I had with her before everything went wrong was on a Sunday evening in January, just before I started spring semester. I called her every Sunday at 7 p.m., right after dinner, and we would talk for at least an hour about everything and nothing. She would tell me about the mystery novel she was reading, or the new recipe she had tried, or the gossip from her weekly bridge game with the other ladies from her church. That particular Sunday, she was excited about a new jigsaw puzzle she had started, a 1,000-piece image of a Victorian garden that was challenging but not impossible. She asked me about my classes, about Sarah, about whether I was eating enough vegetables and getting enough sleep. She reminded me to call my parents more often because they missed me, even though I suspected she was the one who missed me most. "I love you, Dylan," she said before we hung up. "You're going to change the world someday." "I love you too, Grandma. I'll call you next Sunday." But I did not call her the next Sunday because I was cramming for a biochemistry midterm, or the Sunday after that because I had a date with Sarah, or the Sunday after that because I was working on a research paper for my psychology elective. Life got busy, and before I knew it, 3 weeks had passed without talking to the most important person in my life. The call that changed everything came on a Tuesday evening while I was in my dorm room, surrounded by textbooks and empty energy drink cans, trying to understand the molecular structure of amino acids. Sarah was curled up next to me on my narrow twin bed, highlighting passages in her abnormal psychology textbook and occasionally reading me interesting facts about various mental disorders. "Did you know that the average age of onset for schizophrenia is different for men and women?" she said, not looking up from her book. "That's fascinating," I replied, though I was not really listening. I was focused on a particularly confusing diagram of tryptophan synthesis. When my phone rang and I saw it was my mother calling, I almost let it go to voicemail. Talking to my parents usually meant 20 minutes of them asking when I was coming home for dinner and reminding me to do my laundry and asking if I needed money, which they did not have to give me anyway. "Hey, Mom," I answered, not looking up from my notes. "Dylan, honey." Her voice was different, tight, strained in a way that made me sit up straighter and close my textbook. "I need to tell you something about Grandma Rose." My heart dropped into my stomach like a stone falling down a well. The tone in my mother's voice was the same one doctors used when they had bad news to deliver. Clinical, carefully controlled, artificially calm. "What about Grandma?" I asked, my voice already shaking. Sarah noticed the change in my demeanor and sat up, muting her TV and giving me her full attention. "Well, you know how she's been getting more confused lately. The doctor said it was dementia, and it was getting progressively worse. We made the difficult decision to move her to a facility where she can get the professional care she needs." I felt like someone had punched me in the chest and knocked all the air out of my lungs. What? When? Why didn't anyone tell me this was happening? It happened fast, honey. She had a really bad episode last month while you were taking finals. She got confused and tried to leave the house at 2 in the morning. A neighbor found her walking down the street in her nightgown, completely disoriented. The doctor said it wasn't safe for her to live alone anymore. But she wasn't living alone, I protested, my voice getting louder. She lives 10 minutes away from you guys. You check on her every day. She has a medical alert bracelet. She has neighbors who look out for her. Dylan, it was more serious than that. She wasn't eating properly, wasn't taking her medications consistently. The house was getting dirty because she couldn't keep up with cleaning anymore. She left the stove on overnight twice. She called 911 3 times thinking there were intruders in her house when it was just the neighbor's cat in her yard. Something about this conversation felt fundamentally wrong, but I could not put my finger on exactly what it was. My mother's voice had that artificially bright tone she used when she was trying to convince me that everything was fine when it clearly was not. The same tone she had used when she told me that my father's business was going through a rough patch, when I later found out they were 3 months behind on the mortgage. Can I call her? I asked. Can I visit her when I come home for spring break next month? There was a pause that lasted just a beat too long, the kind of pause that happens when someone is trying to think of a lie that sounds believable. The facility has a strict policy about phone calls and visits. My mother said carefully, each word chosen with obvious deliberation. They limit outside contact during the adjustment period. The social worker explained that it helps residents settle in without getting confused about where they are or constantly asking to go home. But I promise we can arrange a visit when you come home for spring break. Mom, that doesn't make any sense. Grandma doesn't have dementia that severe. Last time I talked to her, 3 weeks ago, she was telling me about the new mystery novel she was reading. She remembered the plot, the characters' names, everything. She asked me specific questions about my chemistry professor, remembered his name, what he looked like. She was sharp as ever. Honey, dementia is unpredictable and progressive. People can seem completely fine one day and be utterly lost the next. I know this is hard to accept, but we're doing what's best for her. The doctors assured us that this type of care is exactly what she needs. What's the name of the facility? What's the address? I want to send her a care package. Another pause, shorter this time, but still noticeable. It's called Sunset Manor. It's a beautiful place. Very caring staff. I don't have the address with me right now, but I'll email it to you later tonight. After I hung up, I sat on my bed staring at the wall for 20 minutes, my biochemistry textbook forgotten in my lap. Sarah kept asking if I was okay, but I could not find the words to explain the hollow feeling in my chest, like someone had scooped out my insides with a spoon. Dylan, talk to me, Sarah said, taking my hand. What's wrong? My parents put my grandmother in a nursing home without telling me. They say she has dementia, but that doesn't make sense. She was fine 3 weeks ago when I talked to her. Maybe it happened suddenly? Sometimes dementia can progress quickly. But the things they're saying don't add up. No phone calls, no visits. What kind of facility has policies like that? Maybe they're just trying to help her adjust. Sarah, my grandmother raised me. We talk every Sunday. She would never agree to a place where she couldn't talk to me. That night, I could not concentrate on my studies. I kept thinking about the last conversation I had with Grandma Rose, how normal and happy she had sounded. Yes, she occasionally forgot where she put her reading glasses or repeated a story she had told me the week before, but that was normal aging, not dementia severe enough to require institutional care. I called my father the next day, hoping he would give me more details, but his story was exactly the same as my mother's. Word for word. They had clearly coordinated their responses, rehearsed what they were going to say, which only made me more suspicious. My father was never good at lying, and when I asked him the name of the facility again, he paused before saying Sunset Manor, like he was reading it from a script. "Dad, can you describe what the place looks like? What's Grandma's room like?" "Well, it's very nice. Modern. Her room has a view of the garden." "What kind of garden?" "Just, flowers and things." "Dylan, I have to go. I'm at a job site." "Dad, wait. I want the phone number for Sunset Manor. I want to call and speak to her social worker." "I'll have your mother get you that information." But the information never came. Over the next few days, I tried to research Sunset Manor online, but I could not find any facility by that name in the Phoenix area. I called information, searched social media, looked at reviews on Google, checked with the Better Business Bureau. Nothing. When I called my parents back to ask for the address so I could send Grandma flowers, my mother claimed she did not have it with her and would email it to me later. The email never came. I started calling random assisted living facilities in Phoenix, pretending to be a family member looking for my grandmother. "Hi, I'm looking for my grandmother, Rose Foster. She was recently admitted to your facility." Call after call, the answer was the same. No Rose Foster. No recent admissions matching her description. By Friday, I had made up my mind. I was driving home that weekend to see my grandmother, no matter what my parents said about facility policies or adjustment periods. I had saved enough money from my campus job working in the dining hall to cover the gas for the 4-hour round trip, and Sarah agreed to come with me for moral support. "Are you sure about this?" Sarah asked as we loaded her car with snacks and bottled water for the drive. "Maybe your parents are telling the truth and you're worrying about nothing." My gut tells me something is wrong. I've never known my parents to make a major decision about Grandma Rose without consulting me first. And the story doesn't make sense. No phone calls, no visits, no address. What if they get mad at you for showing up unexpectedly? Then they get mad, but I need to see her with my own eyes. The drive from Tempe to Phoenix took 2 hours through desert landscape that should have been beautiful, but felt ominous under the circumstances. Sarah tried to distract me with music and road trip snacks, but I could not shake the feeling that something terrible was waiting for me at home. We stopped for gas in Scottsdale, about 30 minutes from my childhood home, and I called Grandma Rose's house phone one more time. It went straight to a disconnected number message, which was strange because she had had the same phone number for 15 years. When we pulled into the driveway of my childhood home, everything looked exactly the same as it always had. The same desert landscaping with carefully arranged red rocks and drought-resistant plants. The same beige stucco exterior with brown trim that my mother had chosen because it hid the dirt. The same basketball hoop mounted above the garage door where I had spent countless hours shooting free throws and dreaming of making my high school varsity team. But something felt different about the house, like it was holding its breath. The windows were closed despite the pleasant February weather, and I noticed that my father's work truck was not in the driveway, which was unusual for a Saturday afternoon. My parents were not expecting me. I had intentionally not called ahead because I wanted to surprise them and ask about visiting Grandma before they had time to prepare their excuses or coordinate their stories. I used my key to let myself in through the front door, calling out that I was home. The house smelled different somehow, like cleaning products mixed with something else I could not identify, something that reminded me of the nursing home where I had volunteered during my senior year of high school. My mother appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. When she saw me, her face went through a rapid series of expressions: surprise, fear, and then forced happiness. "Dylan, what a wonderful surprise. Why didn't you call?" I would have made your favorite dinner." Her voice was too bright, too cheerful, like someone performing happiness rather than feeling it. "I wanted to surprise you," I said, hugging her briefly. She felt thinner than I remembered, and there were dark circles under her eyes like she had not been sleeping well. "Where's Dad?" "He's running errands. He'll be so excited to see you." She turned to Sarah and extended her hand with that same artificial smile. "You must be Sarah. Dylan's told us so much about you." Sarah smiled politely and shook my mother's hand, but I caught her giving me a meaningful look. She had picked up on the same strange energy I was feeling, the sense that we had walked into a performance rather than a genuine family reunion. "Mom, I want to go see Grandma Rose. Can you give me the address for Sunset Manor?" Again, that pause, that fraction of a second where my mother's face went blank before the artificial smile returned, like someone had hit a reset button. "Oh, honey, I don't think that's a good idea today. Visiting hours are very restricted, and they require 48 hours advance notice for all visits. Plus, you know how confused she gets when people visit unexpectedly." The social worker said that surprise visits can be very disorienting for dementia patients. "Since when does Grandma get confused when I visit? I'm her favorite grandson. Her only grandson. She lights up every time she sees me." "Dylan, please don't make this harder than it has to be. The doctors and social workers know what's best for her right now. She's adjusting to her new environment, and any disruption to her routine could set back her progress." I felt anger rising in my chest, the kind of anger I had never felt toward my mother before. It was not just frustration or disappointment, but a deep, burning rage at being lied to by someone who was supposed to protect and care for the people I loved. What doctors? What social workers? What's the name of her doctor? What's the address of this facility? I've been trying to research Sunset Manor online, and I can't find anything. "Dylan, lower your voice. The neighbors might hear you." "I don't care about the neighbors. I care about Grandma Rose, and something about this whole situation doesn't make sense. You're being evasive and secretive, and that's not like you." My mother's face went pale, and for a moment, I saw something that looked like panic in her eyes. Her hands were shaking as she twisted the dish towel between her fingers. "I think you should go back to school. This weekend isn't good for unexpected visits. Maybe we can arrange something for spring break." "No." The word came out harder than I intended, with a finality that surprised both of us. "I'm not leaving until I see my grandmother." "Dylan, where is she, Mom?" The question hung in the air between us like a challenge. My mother's hands were shaking now, and she kept glancing toward the basement door, like she was afraid someone might come up from downstairs. That was when I noticed the smell more distinctly. It was not just cleaning products and mustiness. It was the smell of a house where someone was not taking proper care of personal hygiene, mixed with something else that made my stomach turn. Something that reminded me of the elder care facility where I had volunteered, where residents sometimes had accidents, and the staff was not always quick to respond. "What's that smell?" I asked. "What smell? I don't smell anything." But she was lying, and I could see it in her face, in the way she kept fidgeting with the dish towel, in the way she positioned herself between me and the basement door like she was guarding something. "Mom, there's definitely a smell. It's coming from downstairs. The basement has always been musty. You know that. This isn't musty. This is something else. Dylan, you're being paranoid. There's nothing wrong." But everything was wrong. The artificial cheerfulness, the evasive answers, the mysterious smell, the way my mother kept blocking my path to different parts of the house. "I'm going to call the police and report Grandma as a missing person," I said, pulling out my phone, "since you can't tell me where she is or prove that she's safe." "Dylan, no. Please don't." "Then tell me where my grandmother is." She's safe. She's being taken care of." "That's not what I asked. I asked where she is." For a long moment, we stared at each other. 19 years of being the obedient son who never questioned authority, never raised his voice, never pushed back when his parents made decisions for the family. But something had shifted in me over the past year of college, living on my own, making my own choices, learning to think critically about the information people gave me. I was not a child anymore, and I was not going to let them treat me like one. "I'm going to look for her myself," I announced, heading toward the stairs to check the upstairs bedrooms. "Dylan, she's not here." "Then you won't mind if I look." I searched every room upstairs methodically, like a detective investigating a crime scene. Grandma Rose's old bedroom, which my parents had always kept exactly as she left it when she moved to her own house 20 years ago. The guest room where she stayed when she visited for holidays. My old bedroom, which looked exactly the same as when I had left for college. My parents' room, their closets, even the bathroom cabinets. Nothing. No sign that my grandmother had been in this house recently. But the smell was getting stronger as I came back downstairs, and it was definitely coming from the basement. I had not been in our basement in years. It was mostly storage space, full of Christmas decorations and old furniture and boxes of things my parents could not bear to throw away, but did not want cluttering up the main house. The door was at the end of the kitchen, past the breakfast nook, where I had eaten countless bowls of cereal before school. As I approached the basement door, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. There were 3 new locks on the basement door, heavy-duty deadbolts that had not been there when I lived at home 6 months ago. The kind of locks you put on a door when you want to make absolutely sure no one can get out from the other side. "Why are there locks on the basement door?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. My mother was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face, her hands still twisted in that dish towel, like she was trying to strangle it. "Dylan, please don't go down there." "Why?" "Please, just leave. Go back to school. Forget about this weekend. Forget about everything." "Forget about what?" "Mom, you're scaring me." I reached for the first lock with trembling hands. My mother grabbed my arm, her fingernails digging into my skin hard enough to leave marks. "Dylan, stop. You don't understand. It's complicated." "Then explain it to me." But she could not. She just stood there crying and shaking her head, and I realized that whatever was behind that door was so terrible that my own mother could not find words for it. I pulled away from her and started working on the locks. They were new enough that they still turned smoothly, but my hands were shaking so badly that it took several attempts to get the keys to turn. Sarah stood beside me, her face pale but determined, ready to support whatever I was about to discover. The first lock clicked open with a sound that seemed unnaturally loud in the quiet house. Then the second. The smell got stronger, more distinct. It was definitely the smell of human waste and unwashed bodies, and something else that made my stomach turn. When I turned the third lock and pulled the door open, the smell hit me like a physical force, so strong that I had to cover my nose and mouth with my shirt to keep from gagging. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was the voice that came floating up from the darkness below, weak and hoarse, but unmistakably familiar. "Dylan? Dylan, is that you, honey?" It was Grandma Rose. I fumbled for the light switch, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. When the basement light flickered on, revealing the scene below, I saw something that will be burned into my memory for the rest of my life. My grandmother was sitting on a bare mattress on the concrete floor, chained to a support beam by her ankle with a heavy chain and padlock. She was wearing a thin cotton nightgown that had not been changed in days, maybe weeks. Her hair was matted and dirty. Her skin was pale from lack of sunlight, and she had lost at least 20 pounds from her already small frame. There was a bucket in the corner that served as her toilet, and the smell left no doubt that it had not been emptied recently. A few bottles of water sat nearby, along with some canned food and a sleeve of crackers. A single thin blanket lay crumpled beside her. When she saw me at the top of the stairs, her face lit up with the biggest, most heartbreaking smile I had ever seen. "Dylan! Oh my goodness, Dylan! I knew you would come find me. I knew you wouldn't forget about me." I could not speak. I could not breathe. I could not process what I was seeing. This was not possible. This was not something that happened in real families, in real houses, in real life. This was something from horror movies or true crime documentaries. Not something that happened to grandmothers who taught their grandsons to make grilled cheese sandwiches and never missed a baseball game. "Grandma," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I'm so sorry you have to see me like this, honey. I try to keep myself as clean as possible, but it's hard with just the wet wipes your mother brings down sometimes." I stumbled down the stairs, Sarah right behind me, both of us moving like we were in a nightmare. Up close, I could see that my grandmother had bed sores on her arms and legs from lying on the thin mattress. Her lips were cracked from dehydration, and there were dark circles under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and despair. But her eyes were clear, completely, absolutely clear. There was no dementia, no confusion, no mental impairment of any kind. She knew exactly where she was, what was happening to her, and how long she had been there. "Grandma, how long have you been down here?" "About 6 months, honey, right after Christmas. Your parents said it was temporary, just until they could figure out what to do with me." "What to do with you? What does that mean?" "Well, I was asking too many questions about your father's business. I noticed some things that didn't seem right, financial irregularities, and I was worried about the family getting in trouble with the law. Your mother said I was being paranoid and causing problems, but I kept pushing because I was concerned about you kids getting dragged into something illegal." "My father's business. He ran a small construction company that did residential projects around Phoenix. What could my grandmother have discovered that was so damaging they would imprison her in their own basement? What kind of irregularities?" "Billing fraud, honey. Your father was charging clients for materials he never bought, pocketing the difference. Insurance fraud too, claiming storm damage on houses that were never damaged, then splitting the insurance payouts with homeowners. I found receipts, contracts, email printouts. He was stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars. I felt like the world was tilting sideways. Not only had my parents imprisoned my grandmother, they had done it to cover up my father's criminal activities. "Grandma, I'm getting you out of here right now." "Dylan, no." My mother's voice came from behind me. She had followed us down the stairs, and she was holding a kitchen knife, not threateningly, exactly, but like she was prepared to use it if necessary. "You don't understand what you're doing. If Rose talks to people, your father will go to prison. The whole family will be ruined. So you locked her in the basement? Mom, this is elder abuse. This is kidnapping. This is..." I struggled to find words for the magnitude of what I was seeing. "This is survival," she screamed, her voice echoing off the concrete walls. "You think we wanted to do this? You think this was easy for us? But Rose was going to destroy everything we've worked for." "Everything you've worked for? You mean everything you've stolen? Your father provides for this family. He put you through school. He paid for your car, your clothes, your food, and Rose was going to throw it all away over some paperwork." I looked at my grandmother, who was watching this exchange with sad but unsurprised eyes. How many times had she heard this same argument from her son and daughter-in-law over the past 6 months? "Dylan," Grandma Rose said quietly, "the key to the chain is in your mother's pocket. The small silver one." My mother backed up the stairs, still holding the knife. "I'm not letting you ruin this family." For a moment, I felt like that little boy again, the one who was afraid to challenge his parents, afraid to rock the boat, afraid to make waves. The obedient son who always did what he was told, who never questioned authority, who trusted that his parents always knew best. But then I looked at my grandmother, sitting in her own filth, chained like an animal, and something inside me snapped. I was 19 years old, legally an adult, and this woman had spent her whole life taking care of me. She had sacrificed for me, loved me unconditionally, and believed in me when I did not believe in myself. Now it was my turn to take care of her. "Sarah, call 911, I said without taking my eyes off my mother. "Dylan, please. Call them now." Sarah was already dialing, her voice shaking as she spoke to the emergency dispatcher. "We need police and paramedics at 1247 Desert Rose Drive in Phoenix. We've found an elderly woman being held against her will in a basement. She appears to be injured and malnourished." "Mom, give me the key." "No, give me the key, or I will take it from you." She must have seen something in my face that she had never seen before, because her whole demeanor changed. The artificial brightness, the fake smiles, the lies and manipulation, all of it fell away, and what was left was just a desperate woman who had been caught doing something unforgivable. "We needed the money from her Social Security," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Your father's business was failing because of all the investigations. We couldn't make the house payments, couldn't pay the credit card bills. Rose gets $1,800 a month from Social Security, plus another $1,200 from your grandfather's pension. If she lived in a facility, that money would go to them instead of us. So you pretended she was in a facility and kept her here to steal her benefits?" "We didn't steal anything. We're taking care of her. We bring her food and water." I gestured to the bucket, the chain, the filthy mattress. "You call this taking care of her?" "It was supposed to be temporary, just until the business investigations were over and we could get back on our feet. 6 months is not temporary. This is torture." My mother was sobbing now, the knife forgotten in her hand. "Dylan, if you call the police, your father and I will go to prison. Is that what you want? To destroy your own family? You destroyed this family the day you chained your own mother-in-law in a basement." I walked up the stairs toward her, and she backed away from me until she hit the kitchen wall. I gently took the knife out of her hand and reached into her pocket for the key. She did not resist. All the fight had gone out of her. If you're starting to understand how sometimes protecting family means standing up to family, then you'll want to hear the other stories on this channel about young adults learning that love sometimes requires the hardest choices. Hit that subscribe button, because these stories will change how you think about courage and loyalty. When I got back downstairs, Grandma Rose was waiting patiently, like she had been waiting for 6 months. The chain around her ankle was heavy, the kind they use for large dogs, and the lock was rusty from the basement humidity. "I'm so sorry, Grandma," I whispered as I worked to unlock the chain. "I'm so sorry I didn't know. I'm so sorry I didn't come sooner." "Oh, honey, you couldn't have known. They told everyone I was in a facility. They even showed fake pictures to the neighbors." "Fake pictures. Stock photos from assisted living websites. Your mother showed them to Mrs. Peterson next door, told her I was so happy in my new home. She's quite the actress when she needs to be." The chain fell away with a heavy clank, and I helped my grandmother stand up. Her legs were weak from months of inactivity, and she had to lean heavily on me to make it to the stairs. "We're going to get you to a hospital," I told her, "and then we're going to make sure this never happens to anyone else." "What about your parents?" "They made their choice. Now I'm making mine." Getting Grandma Rose up the basement stairs was the hardest physical thing I had ever done, not because she was heavy. She probably weighed less than 90 pounds, but because every step reminded me of how long she had been trapped down there. 6 months of sitting in that dark basement, wondering if anyone would ever come looking for her. Sarah had moved her car to the end of the driveway to make room for the ambulance and police cars. My mother sat at the kitchen table with her head in her hands, no longer trying to stop us or justify what she had done. She just kept repeating the same phrase over and over. We didn't have a choice. We didn't have a choice. But we always have a choice. That was the lesson I learned that day. Maybe not good choices, maybe not easy choices, but we always have a choice between doing the right thing and doing the convenient thing. The first police officer through the door was a woman named Detective Martinez, who looked to be about my mother's age. She took one look at my grandmother and immediately called for additional paramedics and a crime scene team. "Son, can you tell me what happened here?" she asked me. I told her everything. About the phone call, about the lies regarding Sunset Manor, about finding my grandmother chained in the basement. I told her about my father's business and the insurance fraud and the stolen Social Security benefits. I gave her every detail I could remember, even though it meant incriminating my own parents. Detective Martinez listened without interrupting, taking notes in a small leather notebook. When I finished, she looked at me with something that might have been respect. "That took a lot of courage, son. I know this couldn't have been easy. It was the right thing to do. Not everyone would see it that way. You could have walked away, pretended you never saw anything. Let someone else deal with it. No, I couldn't have. She's my grandmother. She took care of me my whole life. This was my chance to take care of her." They arrested my mother first, right there in the kitchen where I had eaten countless bowls of cereal before school. They read her rights while she cried and kept asking if she could call a lawyer. Then they waited for my father to come home so they could arrest him too. When my father's work truck pulled into the driveway an hour later, I watched through the living room window as Detective Martinez and 2 other officers approached him. Even from a distance, I could see the exact moment when he realized what had happened. His shoulders sagged, his head dropped, and he did not even try to run or resist when they put the handcuffs on him. The paramedics spent 45 minutes examining my grandmother before they felt confident enough to transport her to the hospital. She was dehydrated, malnourished, and suffering from several infections, but she was alive and alert and kept telling everyone who would listen how proud she was of her grandson. "I knew Dylan would find me," she told Detective Martinez. "I told myself every day that he would come home and realize something was wrong. He's always been a smart boy, always asked the right questions." "How did you survive down there for 6 months?" Detective Martinez asked. "I thought about Dylan," Grandma Rose said simply. "I thought about his dreams of becoming a doctor, and I knew I had to stay alive long enough for him to find me. I couldn't let them win by giving up." At the hospital, I sat in the waiting room while doctors ran tests and started 4 fluids and began the process of treating 6 months of medical neglect. Sarah bought me coffee from the vending machine and sat beside me, not saying much, but just being there when I needed her. "Are you okay?" she asked finally. "I don't know. I keep thinking about how long she was down there, how many nights she went to sleep wondering if anyone would ever find her, how many times she must have thought about giving up. But you did find her. You saved her. I should have known something was wrong sooner. I should have come home when they first told me she moved to a facility. I should have demanded to see her. Dylan, you were 19 years old. You trusted your parents to tell you the truth about your own grandmother. That's not naive, that's normal. But I was supposed to protect her. She protected me my whole life. And when she needed me, I was off playing college student. Sarah took my hand and squeezed it. You were being a college student. That's what 19-year-olds are supposed to do. Your parents are the ones who betrayed that trust. When the doctor finally came out to talk to me, he looked tired but optimistic. Your grandmother is going to be fine. She's dehydrated and she's lost significant weight, but there's no permanent damage. With proper nutrition and physical therapy, she should make a full recovery. What about her mental state? Sharp as a tack. Whatever your parents told you about dementia, it was completely false. Your grandmother's cognitive function is excellent for someone her age. She's actually been giving the nurses detailed instructions about how to contact her bank and her attorney. I felt relief wash over me like a warm wave. Not only was Grandma Rose going to be okay physically, but she was going to be able to testify about what happened to her. My parents would not be able to claim she was confused or unreliable. Can I see her? She's been asking for you. Grandma Rose was sitting up in a hospital bed, connected to 4 lines and wearing a clean hospital gown. She looked 10 years younger already, just from being clean and hydrated. When she saw me, she held out her arms for a hug. "How are you feeling?" I asked, like I'm alive again. "Dylan, I cannot thank you enough for what you did today. I was starting to think I was going to die in that basement. You never have to thank me for doing the right thing. But you did more than that. You chose me over your own parents. That takes a special kind of courage. They chose themselves over you a long time ago. I just made the choice they should have made." We talked for 2 hours about everything that had happened over the past 6 months. How my parents had convinced the neighbors that she had moved to a facility by showing them fake brochures and staged photos. How they had continued collecting her Social Security and pension checks while telling social services that she was in private care. How they had slowly sold off her furniture and belongings, telling people she was downsizing for her new living situation. It was so elaborate, Grandma Rose said. They had fake business cards for Sunset Manor, fake newsletters, even fake photos of me supposedly enjoying activities there. Your mother must have spent weeks preparing all of it. They were planning this for months. Oh yes, this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. They had been talking about what to do with me ever since the FBI started investigating your father's business practices. I think they always planned to make me disappear somehow. The FBI is investigating Dad for over a year now. Construction fraud, insurance fraud, tax evasion. I tried to warn him that he was going to get caught, tried to convince him to come clean and pay back what he had stolen. That's when they decided I was a liability. The scope of my parents' criminality was staggering. This was not just elder abuse or benefits fraud. This was an organized criminal enterprise that had been operating for years. What happens now? I asked. Well, the police said they're charging your parents with elder abuse, kidnapping, false imprisonment, benefits fraud, and probably some other things I'm forgetting. Your father's business records are being seized as evidence of the insurance fraud I was trying to report. And what about you? Where will you live? I still have my house, honey. Your parents never actually sold it. Just told everyone I did. I can go home as soon as the doctors clear me. I'm not going back to school. Not yet. I'm going to stay and take care of you. Dylan, you absolutely are going back to school. I'm 73 years old. Not dead. I can take care of myself just fine. But no buts. You have a future to build. I won't let what your parents did rob you of your education and your dreams. That was my grandmother. Even after 6 months of imprisonment and abuse, she was more worried about my college classes than her own recovery. I'll compromise, I said. I'll go back to school, but I'm coming home every weekend to check on you. Deal. The legal proceedings took almost 18 months to resolve. My parents both eventually pled guilty to multiple felonies in exchange for reduced sentences. My mother got 4 years in prison. My father got 7 because of the additional fraud charges related to his business. They both lost their professional licenses and were ordered to pay restitution for the stolen benefits and the costs of my grandmother's medical treatment. The FBI investigation into my father's business uncovered over $800,000 in fraudulent billing and insurance claims stretching back 5 years. Dozens of families had been overcharged for construction work, and several insurance companies had paid out claims for damage that never existed. The hardest part was not the legal proceedings or the media attention when the story made local news. The hardest part was the family members who said I had overreacted, that I should have handled it privately, that I had destroyed the family by involving the police. My uncle, my father's brother, called me a few weeks after the arrests and told me that I was a selfish kid who had ruined everyone's lives over something that could have been worked out between family members. Worked out how? I asked him. By leaving Grandma Rose chained in a basement for the rest of her life. Your parents were under a lot of financial pressure. They made a mistake. Keeping someone prisoner for 6 months is not a mistake. It's a crime. You could have helped them find another solution. The solution was not imprisoning an elderly woman in the first place. But now look what's happened. Your parents are in prison. The family business is destroyed, and we're all dealing with this scandal. And Grandma Rose is alive and free. That seems like a fair trade to me. These conversations taught me that some people will find a way to justify anything if it means avoiding uncomfortable truths about the people they love. They would rather blame the person who reported the abuse than the people who committed it. My aunt, my mother's sister, was even worse. She actually suggested that maybe my grandmother had been difficult, and that my parents had just been trying to manage a challenging situation. Difficult how? I asked. By asking questions about obvious criminal activity? Well, sometimes elderly people can be paranoid and accusatory. She wasn't paranoid. The FBI investigation proved she was right about everything. But families should handle these things privately. There's nothing private about chaining someone in a basement. But I also learned that standing up for what's right, even when it costs you everything, is the only way to live with yourself. Every time I visited my grandmother in her own house, sitting in her own chair, eating food she had chosen for herself, wearing clothes she had picked out, I knew I had made the right choice. I changed my major from pre-med to social work halfway through my sophomore year. Seeing what my grandmother had endured and how many people were willing to look the other way made me realize I wanted to spend my career protecting vulnerable adults who could not protect themselves. The change wasn't easy. I had to take additional courses, extend my graduation by a semester, and give up my dreams of becoming a doctor. But I found that social work gave me something that medicine never could have: the ability to be an advocate for people who had been silenced by the very people who were supposed to care for them. Grandma Rose lived independently for 3 more years before she decided to move to an actual assisted living facility, a beautiful place called Sunrise Estates that she chose herself after visiting 6 different options and reading all the contracts carefully. She made friends there, played bingo twice a week, took watercolor painting classes, and organized a book club that met every Thursday afternoon. She never spoke to my parents again, even after they were released from prison. When my mother called her from a halfway house in Tucson, Grandma Rose listened for about 30 seconds before hanging up. "Some things can't be forgiven," she told me afterward. "Not because I'm holding a grudge, but because forgiveness doesn't undo the damage or guarantee it won't happen again. Your parents made a choice to see me as a source of income instead of a human being. That changes who they are fundamentally. Do you ever regret that I called the police?" "Never. Not for 1 second. Dylan, you gave me back my life. More than that, you gave me back my dignity." She died peacefully in her sleep at age 78, surrounded by people who loved her and respected her autonomy. At her funeral, dozens of people shared stories about how she had helped them, or inspired them, or simply made their lives better by being in it. The pastor read a letter she had written specifically for her funeral service. In it, she thanked everyone who had been part of her life, but she saved special words for me. To my grandson Dylan, who taught me that love is not just a feeling, but an action. Thank you for showing me that even when the people who are supposed to protect us fail, there are still people in the world who will stand up for what's right. My parents did not attend the funeral. I saw my father once, about 5 years later, at a grocery store in Scottsdale. He looked older and tired, wearing clothes that had seen better days. When our eyes met across the produce aisle, he quickly looked away and headed in the opposite direction. I felt sorry for him in that moment, not sorry enough to forgive what he had done, but sorry that he had chosen a path that led to losing everything that actually mattered. He had traded his relationship with his mother and his son for money that was spent years ago, and now he had neither the money nor the family. Today, I work for Adult Protective Services in Maricopa County. I investigate reports of elder abuse and neglect, and I help families navigate the difficult decisions that come with caring for aging relatives. I have seen things that would make most people sick: elderly people locked in closets, grandparents being systematically poisoned for their inheritance, nursing home residents being sexually abused by staff members. But I have also seen the incredible resilience of people who refuse to be broken by the cruelty of others. I have seen families come together to protect their most vulnerable members. I have seen young adults make the difficult choice to report their own parents when they discover abuse. Every case I work reminds me of my grandmother and the choice I had to make when I was 19 years old. Not every family member I encounter makes the same choice I did. Some of them prioritize family loyalty over justice, or convenience over compassion, or financial considerations over human dignity. But some of them choose to be the voice for someone who cannot speak for themselves. Some of them choose to do the hard thing instead of the easy thing. Some of them discover that growing up means accepting responsibility for protecting the people who are vulnerable. Last month, I worked a case involving a 20-year-old college student who discovered that his stepfather was systematically stealing his grandfather's medication and selling it for drug money. The grandfather was suffering in terrible pain, while his son-in-law profited from his misery. The young man called me in tears, asking what he should do. His mother was begging him not to involve authorities, claiming it would destroy the family. His stepfather was threatening to kick him out of the house if he reported anything. "I don't know what to do," he said. "Everyone's telling me to keep quiet, but my grandfather is suffering." "What does your gut tell you?" I asked. "That this is wrong, that someone has to speak up for him." "Then you know what to do." He filed the report. His stepfather was arrested. His mother stopped speaking to him, but his grandfather got the medical care he needed, and a young man learned that sometimes doing the right thing means standing alone against everyone you thought you could trust. I think about that day in my parents' basement a lot. I think about how close I came to just accepting their story about Sunset Manor and going back to college without asking more questions. I think about how many days or weeks or months my grandmother might have spent in that basement if I had not decided to come home and demand the truth. The thing that scares me most is not what actually happened, but what almost did not happen. The version of this story where I trusted my parents, where I accepted their lies, where I let my grandmother die alone in a basement because it was easier than confronting the truth. I have learned that elder abuse is far more common than most people realize. According to the National Center on Elder Abuse, 1 in 10 Americans aged 60 and older have experienced some form of abuse, neglect, or exploitation. Most of it happens within families, perpetrated by people who are supposed to be caregivers and protectors. The cases I see in my work range from financial exploitation to physical abuse to the kind of imprisonment my grandmother endured. What they all have in common is that The victims are isolated, vulnerable, and dependent on their abusers for basic needs. They also have in common that there is usually at least one family member who knows something is wrong, but chooses to look the other way. Maybe because they don't want to cause family drama. Maybe because they're afraid of the financial consequences. Maybe because they can't bear to believe that someone they love is capable of such cruelty. But abuse thrives in silence and secrecy. It continues because good people choose to do nothing. It escalates because no one is willing to be the first person to speak up. I was 19 years old when I learned that sometimes being an adult means making decisions that will change your life forever. Sometimes it means choosing between the family you were born into and the family you choose to protect. Sometimes it means discovering that the people who raised you are capable of things you never imagined possible. But most importantly, I learned that when someone cannot protect themselves and you have the power to help them, there is only one right choice. Everything else is just fear disguised as justification. My grandmother saved me in ways I did not understand until I had to save her. She taught me that love is not just a feeling, it is an action. It is choosing to do the difficult thing because it is the right thing. It is refusing to look away when someone needs you to see them. She taught me that courage is not the absence of fear, but acting in spite of fear. She taught me that family is not defined by blood alone, but by who shows up when you need them most. I am 26 years old now, and I have a photo of Grandma Rose on my desk at work. In the picture, she is sitting in her garden at Sunrise Estates, wearing a wide-brimmed sun hat and holding a tomato she grew herself. She is smiling the same smile she had when I found her in that basement, the one that said she knew I would come for her. Every time I get a case involving family members who claim they are acting in their relatives' best interest while clearly exploiting them, I look at that photo and remember what real love looks like. It looks like chains falling away. It looks like someone finally being free to make their own choices again. It looks like a 19-year-old boy deciding that protecting the innocent is more important than protecting the family name. If you are facing a situation where you know something is wrong, but everyone is telling you to keep quiet, to not make waves, to handle it privately, I want you to remember this story. I want you to remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable abuse. Sometimes the most loyal thing you can do is be disloyal to people who have lost their way. Sometimes growing up happens all at once. In a basement that smells like neglect and desperation, when you realize that you are the only thing standing between cruelty and justice. And sometimes that moment of growing up is the most important thing you will ever do. The world needs more young adults who are willing to stand up for vulnerable people, even when it costs them everything. The world needs more people who understand that silence in the face of abuse is complicity, and that love sometimes requires us to take actions that feel like betrayal. If this story has moved you to think differently about family loyalty and moral courage, then I encourage you to share it. Someone in your life might be facing a similar situation, wondering if they should speak up about abuse they've witnessed. Someone might need to hear that doing the right thing is more important than keeping the peace. Someone might need to know that growing up sometimes means choosing to be the adult that the actual adults in your life refuse to be. Thank you for listening to my story of growing up faster than I ever wanted to. I've left 2 more stories on your screen, both from young men who learned that sometimes becoming an adult doesn't happen at 18. It happens the moment your family needs you to be strong. Click on whichever one speaks to you. And if you want to join our community of people who understand what it's like to be forced to grow up overnight, that notification bell is waiting. Until tomorrow, remember, age is just a number, but courage defines who you really are.